Hello. Colombia, once a vast empire, has gradually turned into a major global crime hub. This country, located in South America, with an area of 1,141,748 square kilometers, ranks 25th in the world by size. In 2020, Colombia's population was 50,372,424, making it the 29th most populous country globally. Economically, Colombia's GDP was estimated at $827.662 billion in 2020, ranking 31st worldwide with a per capita income of approximately $16,264. These figures may be familiar to those who have read articles about this country. However, a quick online search will reveal a host of dark information about Colombia: crime, human rights violations, and civil war. These issues have rendered Colombia's social situation so chaotic that it resembles a boiling pressure cooker. From being a powerful empire, Colombia has fallen into disarray. After gaining independence from Spanish rule in 1819, under the leadership of Simón Bolívar and Francisco de Paula Santander, the Grand Colombia Republic was established, encompassing the territories of present-day Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Panama, northern Peru, and northwestern Brazil. However, due to its hasty establishment following the National Liberation Movement, Gran Colombia quickly fell into crisis after Bolívar's sudden death on December 17, 1830. Immediately following his death, Venezuela and Quito, now Ecuador, seceded within the same year. The remainder of Gran Colombia was engulfed in continuous civil wars. Following a 2-year civil war, the United States of Colombia was established in 1863, but it only lasted until 1886, when it became the Republic of Colombia. Nevertheless, civil war persisted. The most painful highlight in Colombia's history was the Thousand Days' War from 1899 to 1902, during which the policies of gunboats and the US dollar intervened to establish influence in the region. As a result, Panama seceded and formed its own nation, further weakening Colombia. In 1903, Colombia experienced about 40 years of peace before entering a chaotic period from the mid to late 1940s and early 1950s, when violence known as La Violencia erupted throughout the country. This violent period began after the assassination of Liberal Party presidential candidate Jorge Eliezer Gaitan on April 9, 1948. As a result, at least 180,000 Colombians were killed and millions more were displaced. This violence persisted until 1964, when President Gustavo Rojas Pinilla began negotiating with opposition forces and the military under the supervision of General Gabriel Paris Gordillo. Subsequently, Colombia's two major political parties, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party, agreed to form a national front to jointly govern the country. Under this arrangement, the presidency would rotate between the two parties every 4 years over a period of 16 years. They also shared power equally at all levels of government. Despite efforts to build a stable political platform, weaknesses in the political system combined with previous periods of violence created an environment for leftist forces and notorious criminal organizations to rise. From the 1970s, the Colombian government faced numerous challenges from opposition forces such as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, the National Liberation Army, ELN, and political factions, as well as from notorious criminal cartels like the Medellin cartel led by Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel. Among these forces, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, established around 1964 to 1966, became the greatest threat to the government. Initially, the military wing of the Communist Party of Colombia, FARC, gradually became involved in criminal activities such as drug trafficking, kidnapping, and forcing children to join their ranks. As a result, FARC was labeled as a terrorist organization by many countries, both capitalist and socialist. Even the Communist Party of Colombia had to dissociate from FARC and form a new party, the Communist Party of Colombia, Marxist-Leninist, to avoid being implicated. Despite its notorious reputation, FARC continued to present itself as a Marxist-Leninist political guerrilla movement, boasting a strong force of 12,000 members by 2007. The organization was active in 25 out of Colombia's 32 provinces, particularly strong in the eastern rainforest region and the Andean highlands. FARC leaders claimed they represented the poor peasants against the wealthy and opposed U.S. influence in Colombia. However, by the 2010s, in response to positive changes in the country and pressure from the government, FARC agreed to negotiate and disarm. Ultimately, they officially disarmed and handed over their weapons to the United Nations, marking the end of one of the largest military conflicts in Colombian history. On June 27, 2017, just a month after FARC announced its transformation into a political party, the organization officially became the People's Republic of Colombia, FARC-EP, under the terms of a previously signed peace agreement. This effort, along with actions aimed at ending the prolonged conflict, earned President Juan Manuel Santos the Nobel Peace Prize in 2016. However, achieving peace did not mean that Colombia's political situation became stable. Political infighting among parties continued vigorously, with little concern for the welfare of the people, weak public administration, and rampant corruption causing growing dissatisfaction among Colombians. Protests by unions, social organizations, students, and workers became a trademark of Colombia. The situation was so tense that in 2021, the South American Football Confederation, CONMEBOL, refused Colombia's request to move the Copa America to November due to instability in the country. This once again highlighted that Colombian politics had never been truly stable. You might find it hard to believe, but the Colombian military, which is supposed to protect the country, has become one of the greatest sources of harm to its people. In other countries, when the military is on the move, civilians often provide food and supplies to the soldiers, but in Colombia, when the military appears, people typically flee, lock their doors, and even run into the forest if possible. This is because encountering an officer with a high quota for eliminating terrorists or a person with malicious intent could endanger their lives. On February 18, 2021, the Special Peace Court in Colombia released a report that shocked the world. According to the report, from 2002 to 2008, the Colombian military killed at least 6,402 innocent civilians and falsified records, claiming these individuals had died in anti-terrorism operations. These incidents occurred during a period when the government intensified its campaign against FARC. Worse still, the reward for the officers involved in these killings was often a promotion or even extended leave. The situation did not stop there. Investigations from 2016 revealed that at least 118 soldiers and military officials in Colombia were accused of sexually abusing minors. By 2020, the case led to the dismissal of 45 individuals with 73 others under criminal investigation. However, not all have been resolved to date. These brutal actions fueled anger among some Colombians, leading them to join FARC. By 2016, when FARC reached a peace agreement with the Colombian government and established the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, JP, to clarify the responsibilities of the parties involved in war crimes, the horrifying truths about the military began to emerge. Many soldiers found themselves trapped between risking their lives in battles and facing the possibility of being wrongfully accused, sitting alongside those responsible for brutal massacres. In the military, promotion required 4 factors: lineage, money, connections, and intelligence. After retiring, these former soldiers faced poverty, societal stigma, and military skills that only led them to a path of crime, becoming mercenaries to survive. In July 2021, during the investigation into the assassination of former Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, it was discovered that more than 20 former Colombian soldiers were involved. This revelation forced Colombia to publicly acknowledge a dark industry it had been part of for a long time, exporting labor in the form of mercenaries, which shocked the world. Elite soldiers from Colombia's counterterrorism units can retire at around 40 with a modest pension and almost no opportunity to transition into other professions. The pay for mercenary work, though, only a fraction of what American or British veterans earn, but is still 4 times higher than their pension. Recruiting Colombians for mercenary work abroad has been ongoing for a long time due to the lack of laws prohibiting it. For example, many Colombians are still active in Dubai. Luis Fernando Navarro Jimenez, the commander of Colombia's armed forces, once shared that wherever there is conflict, such as in the Middle East or Latin America, Colombian mercenaries are present. What's notable is that they are not inexperienced soldiers. Each has undergone at least a year of urban counterterrorism or training in countries with leading military capabilities, such as the US and Israel. However, due to corruption, Colombians have a saying, "As long as you have money, you can avoid military service." This duty is primarily reserved for the poor, minorities, especially those in rural areas affected by conflict. These individuals often have low education levels, with some even illiterate and lacking experience in civilian life. They fall into a vicious cycle because after discharge, they have no opportunity to reintegrate, leading them back to crime or becoming mercenaries. When this reality was exposed, the world was stunned to discover the chaos within the Colombian military, which had previously appeared as a modern force influenced by the US and NATO. Military service here became a turning point that pushed many Colombians into a dark abyss, where crime was seen as a form of national heroism. Exploiting societal gaps since the 1960s, criminal gangs in Colombia proliferated. Especially during this chaotic period, Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel emerged and quickly became dominant. What is rare and hard to believe is that despite being considered a criminal, but Pablo Escobar and his gang engaged in numerous charitable and community projects, such as building hospitals, schools, and soccer fields for impoverished neighborhoods, improving the lives of some Colombians. Escobar even ordered a ban on drug sales within the country, understanding its detrimental effects on the people. For these reasons, many Colombians view Pablo Escobar not just as a criminal, but as a living saint. Many areas he was involved in, especially football, flourished due to his financial resources and influence. Coming from a poor family, football was one of the few joys that helped Escobar forget the hardships of life. Football was Pablo Escobar's greatest passion, and even though he became the world's top drug lord, he could not forget his love for the game. Escobar not only invested in domestic football teams, but also personally built several stadiums as if he were the mayor of a city. These stadiums became places where many future stars of the Colombian national team trained and developed their skills. As a result, Colombian football players were very grateful to Escobar. However, this gratitude had a dark side, as several players were found to be involved in Escobar's illegal activities. A prime example is the legendary goalkeeper René Higuita, who helped Escobar arrange hit jobs between rival drug gangs. When Higuita was arrested, police discovered he had received $64,000 for mediating these cases. Higuita was subsequently sentenced to 7 months in prison. When Escobar was killed in a raid on December 2nd, 1993, without having transferred his power, the Colombian criminal world fell into chaos. Gangs began vying for power, leading to rampant violence and mutual killings. After Escobar's death, the domestic ban on cocaine sales was also forgotten, leading to a surge in drug trafficking. By 2019, the rate of drug addiction in Medellin, Escobar's hometown, had risen to 9.7%. In this city of approximately 2.2 million people, nearly 800 drug dealing spots operated with 15.5% of the population using drugs, making Medellin the city with the highest addiction rate in Colombia. In this context, the Colombian government had to seek assistance from the US. From 2000 to 2016, the US provided nearly $10 billion in aid to Colombia, primarily to support the armed forces in their fight against drug cartels and the FARC armed group. Although this aid reduced the flow of drugs from Colombia to the US, but it also led to an increase in drugs flowing back into the country. Today, Colombians still wonder if the country would have been more peaceful if Escobar had not died so soon. During Escobar's funeral, over 25,000 people attended. In some impoverished neighborhoods, residents still hang pictures of him as a way of honoring and emulating him. Nowadays, drug lords, who have amassed considerable wealth, also engage in charitable work and community support to maintain their status. This has led to a segment of the population dissatisfied with the government, joining criminal organizations. These individuals have defended the drug lords in times of trouble and mobilized people to protest against the government, seeking reduced sentences if arrested. The wealth disparity and persistent social issues remain a bittersweet memory, yet they are among the most painful challenges Colombia faces. Although these issues have diminished compared to the past, but they persist as a lasting legacy in society. From 2002 to 2017, the National Administrative Department of Statistics of Colombia reported that 26.9% of the population still lived below the poverty line, with 7.4% living in extreme poverty. The national unemployment rate in 2017 was 9.4%. According to the World Bank, the Gini coefficient, which measures income inequality, was 0.587 in Colombia in 2000 and decreased to 0.535 in 2013. The country remains among the Latin American nations with high levels of inequality alongside Chile, Panama, Brazil, and Honduras. In 2010, 3.4% of children under 5 in Colombia suffered from complete malnutrition and 13% from chronic malnutrition. The situation was even worse for indigenous people, with malnutrition rates of 7.5% and 29.5% respectively. After the COVID-19 pandemic, previous efforts to reduce poverty were set back. In 2020, the proportion of the population living below the poverty line increased by nearly 7% compared to 2019, and extreme poverty reached 16%. More than two-thirds of the workforce was severely affected by the pandemic, with many businesses forced to close. It is estimated that 21 million Colombians live on just $92 a month, and nearly 2 million households cannot afford 3 meals a day due to economic difficulties. This situation partially explains why the country has such high crime rates and why people frequently take to the streets to protest. In response to this situation, various Colombian administrations have proposed solutions to reduce poverty. For example, in 2015, the Colombian government planned to acquire approximately 2 million hectares of private land and redistribute it to the poor after the civil war with FARC ended. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the government expanded its social safety net, allowing more households to receive aid. It is estimated that an additional 3 million households received cash assistance, and school nutrition programs were adjusted to provide free meals to nearly 6 million children. Additionally, the international community has also made efforts to help Colombia recover through the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, providing a loan of approximately $700 million to respond to the pandemic. This move helped more than 600,000 Colombians escape poverty and prevented an increase of 1.3% in the poverty rate. However, Colombia is often viewed through a glamorous lens as a beautiful country with golden forests, silver seas, and a powerful football team. Yet upon deeper investigation or upon visiting, one discovers that behind this beauty lie crime, civil war, and social instability. Given such an unstable situation, it is challenging for Colombia to strengthen its position or have a significant voice in the international arena. What do you think of this story? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below so others can know. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.